As an undergraduate student myself, I probably wouldn't have guessed that I would find sociological research to be cool. But it kind of is because really all you're doing is asking questions about why do people do what they do? Why does society largely, impact us the way that it does? And so some of this is actually going to look familiar to you. You're a little bit more familiar with the research process and sociological research than you might think you are. So this part, maybe not, I don't know. A literature review. Basically, if you're starting to do research, especially in sociology, you're responsible for going and reading widely in that area. You can't come up with an idea and then not go read what's been said before, what research projects have been done before, in case maybe somebody actually already did what you were thinking of, or just so that you legitimately have some expertise in the area. Then some, like I said, some of this is going to look familiar. This is kind of a science thing, right? That you are going to come up with this educated guess of what you think is going to happen, and then you're going to collect data and see what's going on. It's the same way that we study society. We do it in two main ways, though. And so one is called quantitative methods, and that's the numbers stuff. So a lot of times, what numbers actually are is surveys. You know what a survey is. You've answered surveys. You've done a lot of surveys where it's been on a Likert scale, right? From a scale from 1 to 5. 1 means you could care less. 5 means it's the best thing ever. And then that gets converted into numbers, and you can run statistical analysis and get all nerdy. But it's very straightforward, right? Survey questions that have these answers that constantly can be turned into, if you're saying yes or no, yes is one number, two is the other number, they can start to run data sets with that. There's one of the biggest data sets that we have in our country is the census, right? Every 10 years, we have all of this data on people. In intro to sociology classes, like on campus, I will actually get, we'll do different activities. And one of the activities I have had students do is look at that census data. And there's even things like how long it takes somebody to drive to work in Wyoming versus Los Angeles, which is really interesting. When you go to look at that particular piece of data, it's actually like, I don't know, 46 minutes to drive to work in Wyoming. And it's 46 minutes on average to drive to work in the LA area or something like that. But they didn't ask how many miles, because in Wyoming it could be like 46 miles in 46 minutes. Like, they kind of are missing this key part of data, and sometimes that happens. The other thing with surveys that you have to keep in mind is that the answers that you get from the people who you've asked have to be representative of the larger population that you're studying. For instance, Cal State Long Beach, really, really big school, right? If I were going to try to survey students, there's no way I'm getting to everybody. And so let's say I set a goal, 400 students, right? There's, I don't know, 50 times that, 100 times that or something at Cal State Long Beach. But I'm going to get 400 students. Well, that 400 students needs to be representative of all the demographics of the larger Cal State Long Beach body. If it's, a certain percentage that of people who identify as masculine or feminine or gender non-conforming, non-binary, like my 400 people need to match that. Socioeconomic status, like families coming from working class families, first generation students, all these types of things. My 400 people have to represent the same percentages of the larger school. Otherwise, my research would get reviewed and they'd be like, oh, well, it doesn't really count because it doesn't really demonstrate like the larger population. Yours was skewed in you asked 70% first generation college students, and Cal State Long Beach, I'm throwing numbers out there, is only 60% or something like that. They would say that my research doesn't count. So you do have to be careful about that. That means sometimes when people are asking you to take a survey, it's because they need you with your demographic information to actually be the person to answer the survey so that they have a representative sample. The other way of going about this is also something that technically you really, really know about. Well, the first one, maybe not, but the second thing I'm going to bring up. See those people over on the left, like that creepy ass, like looking into the house? That's such a weird picture. But it is an example of what we're talking about here, ethnography. Ethnography is observation. And so you sit in the thing that you want to study. I don't know, you're going to study student associations on college campuses. Ironic, because ours has been torn down for quite some time. Um, but like you want to study friendships on campus, and so you want to observe what kids are doing. Well, sorry, I call you all kids. Um, you're going to go sit out on a bench and do ethnographic research and like see how many people are walking together around campus. Are they talking to each other as they're walking together? Are they laughing? Is it a group of two? Is it a group of four? Like, you're studying what you see in front of you. And so it's a two-part activity, like it says. First, you sit and you observe, and you try to not like stand out, because otherwise you're going to kind of ruin your research. And then you have to write field notes, which again, you can't totally, while you're observing, you can't be like writing a ton, but you kind of need to make sure you like sit down right after you do observations. Like if you were doing classroom observations or something, you need to make sure that you have extensive notes of what you observed, because that's your research. So that's ethnographic research. And lots of people have done this in lots of different ways, kind of submersing themselves in the people that they want to study. The other one, like I said, this one you're familiar with, interviews. Again, you need to make sure, because you can't interview 100 people, but you can interview 10. And so you need to make sure, again, your sample is representative of the larger population that you're studying. The other thing with interviews is you have to transcribe them a lot of times. So you have to record them. Nowadays, there's more and more electronic kind of transcription services that will make you a transcript, and then you have to read that transcript and like try and find all of the connections in between your research and stuff like that. But you're familiar with interviews, you're familiar with surveys, you're even familiar with observing. Maybe you didn't know the word ethnography, but you know all of these types of ways that we learn about what's going on in the world around us. So, issues with sociological research, it's kind of this tension between, you need to be objective, you need to be logical, you need to be an outsider who's observing. And that's one perspective in sociology. It's one perspective a lot of times in academia, that you need to be very, very, very objective. But what's interesting is some sociologists have the concept of positionality. And the whole idea of positionality is that don't say they and them like you have nothing to do with it if you do. For instance, I did my research for my graduate degree on parents' interactions with students, their child receiving special education services in an educational format, and like the resources that parents need. My whole premise was, there's writing and research that's been done on the fact that administrators need to care about teachers, and teachers certainly need to care about students. But I was asking the question, well, who cares about parents, right? And so what I did was I did ethnographic research, and I sat in meetings at schools with parents, IEP meetings specifically. For those of you who know what an IEP is, it's a legal document that every student receiving special education services has. And what I did was I tried to put together resources and listen for those moments that teachers were giving parents ideas and advice, so that I could develop a whole brochure for the school that said, hey, parents, we really value you. Here's all the things that you need to know. Here's additional suggestions. Here's all our contact information. That was the way that my research went. I wrote about a 40-page paper. I did a literature review, all these types of things. But my daughter has cerebral palsy. I'm a parent to a child receiving special education services. And so that's my positionality, that I would say like that you actually locate yourself, because then your research has some meaning. So I don't know. I don't know if I convinced you how cool sociological research is in this lecture. But I mean, yeah, maybe you're like, yeah, surveys are boring, Professor Griffin, shut up. Um, if you're like me and you have so many questions, I have so many questions. I'm so endlessly curious. Some might say nosy, but whatever. Like, getting to see and think about, why do people do what they do, and how does the world around us impact us? It's pretty darn interesting.